Hey, what's going on, YouTube? I'm working on two major projects for you guys right now, but I just had to pause and make a quick response video to something that is disturbing, but it's something that we see all too often in the so-called black community. This young athletic brother that goes by the name Corey Balentine, who was just drafted by the New York Giants in the NFL, the 2019 NFL draft. He was shot and seriously wounded along with a teammate that was actually killed, Dwayne Simmons. They were both from Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas. Um, I believe he was a All-American running back. No, he's an All-American cornerback that was just drafted by the New York Giants. And this brother was the first draft pick for by any NFL team for Washburn University since 1988. And just within hours of being drafted during the NFL draft, which happened a couple of days ago, he was at a off-campus party with his teammate and friend when they were both shot. Now, police have not found the suspects or recovered the weapons, but this other brother that was killed, scrolling down here, it says Simmons, the brother that was actually killed, was a junior at Washburn, where he had started 17 games as a defensive back despite injuries. He was described by his coach Craig Shurig as one of the most energetic and well-liked players he had encountered. Balentine, 23, the one that was wounded and was the New York Giant draft pick, competed on the football and track and field teams at Washburn, where he holds university sprint records and was a frequent member of his conference's academic honor roll. In a statement posted on Twitter, the Giants said they were aware of the shooting. Now, what I also find interesting about this and quite disturbing is that this is not the first time that neither I've reported on young black male gifted athletes being shot and killed or shot and wounded, nor has this been the first time that something like this has happened just this year. As it says here lower in the article, the shooting in Topeka was one of several just this year involving college football players away from the field. On Saturday, John Scott III, a defensive lineman for Texas Tech, was injured by gunfire. In February, Larry Aaron III, a Marshall defensive lineman, died from gunshot wounds he had sustained weeks earlier during a New Year's party. And last month, a William and Mary player was shot dead in Virginia, and two Texas A&M Commerce players were shot and wounded while being robbed on a trip to Florida. See, and this really goes back to a term that I used to use, and I'm going to start bringing it back up. As some of you may recall, I used this term back when I had my original Brian Too Bad TV Solange channel, that I referred to a lot of black people as having goldfish in a jar mentality, which is equivalent to crabs in a barrel mentality. Only crabs in a barrel is when other black people want to drag you down back to the barrel that they're in, whereas goldfish in a jar mentality are black people who have made it out, so to speak, but they still can't see around that ghetto environment that they came from, so they still keep, fucking with familiar surroundings, of, everything from dating and impregnating hood rat type of females to, hanging out with Negroes that are, ex-cons, felons, gangbangers, drug dealers, like Nipsey Hussle. What did him in? He had goldfish in a jar mentality. And unfortunately, I believe that Corey Balentine and his teammate and friend Dwayne Simmons were also victims of this goldfish in a jar mentality. Because the truth of the matter is, no black man that has something going for himself, for that matter, no black female that has something going for themselves, should be fucking around with these hood parties that we all know what these parties consist of. Okay, twerking booty thoughts, and goofy ass, beta male simp Negroes. You have gang members there, and a lot of these situations, most of the people that be at these so-called off-campus parties, a lot of them don't even go to the college or the university. I remember the university where I live, by University of Illinois, down in central Illinois. Whenever they have something called unofficial, which is it's kind of like a college inspired holiday for St. Patrick's Day, you would see more niggas in green than you would see white folks. And they would come down there specifically for that. You would have Chicago hood rats, and you could tell the type of Chief Keefer like hood people these were, and you could tell that they were from Chicago because of just the way they looked, their swagger, everything. Coming all the way to central Illinois, more than 100 miles, just to act a fucking fool at on campus during this so-called holiday. Okay, they come down there just for the festivities, and whenever you have an overabundance of Getonians in one place, there's gonna be fucking problems. Just like when you have an overabundance of white people, especially young white people, drunk and intoxicated in one place, you're gonna have likely problems. Okay? So the fact of the matter is, no black man that has something going for himself should be anywhere near any of these types of ghetto ratchet ass parties. You shouldn't be partying at all. Okay? The cold hard fact is, when you have something going for you like this Corey Balentine young brother does, you should be focusing on developing yourself, your skills, both mentally and physically, and moving towards building a future for yourself. Okay? Still going to these stupid ass clubs and parties with these ignorant ass Negroes and hood rats is a quick way to cancel yourself out, and pretty much ruin uh the progress that you've made. Okay, any any black person with common sense would know this, but again, likely because this Corey Balentine brother, just like a lot of these brothers, they were raised by these single baby mamas, in these hoods. That's what they know. So even after they get out on top, making the millions, joining a professional sports club, or even in Nipsey Hussle's case, making it, so to speak, in the entertainment world in Hollywood, they still deal with these lower level Negroes to the point where, and this is what I mean by goldfish in a jar mentality. Goldfish in a jar mentality is more dangerous than crabs in a barrel mentality, because when you're a goldfish in a jar, the crabs don't have to pull your black ass back down into the barrel because you're already there in your mind. Okay, you can't see. They say a goldfish, you can take a goldfish and put them in the Pacific Ocean, take them out of the Pacific Ocean and put them in a tiny little peanut jar, and even in spite of them being in a smaller space, they still won't know the difference. Okay, because they had, their brains just simply can't develop to that point where they understand that this is no longer an ocean where I can move freely. This is a tiny little fucking jar where all I can do is go around in circles for the rest of my fucking life. But they won't notice that. Okay? So that's what I mean by, goldfish in a jar mentality being more dangerous than crabs in a barrel mentality. And come to think of it, this tragic case actually reminds me of a tragedy that occurred that obtained national and world acknowledgement back in the 80s, around the time that I was born in 1986. Some of you may recall it. There was a player by the name of Leonard Bias. He died from a drug overdose when his heart stopped right after he had gotten drafted by the then national champions, world champion Boston Celtics, when the Boston Celtics were the Boston Celtics, Larry Bird and all of that. And he had just got drafted in the 1986 draft pick. I think he was the number 2 draft pick that year. And people to this day, they relate the way he played on the field to the way Michael Jordan, performed, and said that he would have been Michael Jordan. He would have been like a Michael Jordan had he actually gone to the professional NBA. But he went to a party within hours after being drafted by the Celtics, and he snorted cocaine. Originally, they were saying that he smoked crack, and it was the Democrats that actually used that later on to pass this anti-drug abuse law that sent hundreds of thousands of young black men who were lower level dealers to prison for decades. But he actually snorted pure cocaine, and it stopped his heart. And this was at a party just only a couple of hours after he got drafted into um, into the Boston Celtics. And just to give you a little idea of what occurred, if you're not familiar with it, um, I'll play this clip here.
Clean cut. He had it all. Len Bias was an All-American basketball star, the University of Maryland's leading scorer. He had speed. His grace was acrobatic. His shot deadly. And after 4 years of college, he was drafted this week by the champion Boston Celtics. He had it all until this morning when his heart gave out and he died. NBC's Robert Hager tells his story.
Forward, number 34, Len Bias.
Spectacular. Len Bias was a superstar at the University of Maryland. Clean cut, everyone said, in superb condition, team doctors reported. The Boston Celtics called him by far the best athlete coming out of college this year.
The Boston Celtics select Len Bias.
And just 2 days ago, the world champion Celtics used their first-round draft choice to pick Bias to play for them after his graduation. This morning, Len Bias was dead of cardiorespiratory arrest. No one knows why yet. There are reports that traces of cocaine were found in Bias's system. The Celtics general manager, Red Auerbach.
I just couldn't believe it. There's a kid that had his whole life ahead of him.
Students and friends grieved as the story unfolded. How Bias, just back from Boston, celebrated with teammates last night, returned to his dorm about 2:30 a.m., and according to his brother Jay, visited a teammate some hours later.
He came into Terry Long's room and laid across they were talking about what happened while they were in Boston. And he laid across the bed, and they thought he was just laying down, but his heart stopped, and that's when he went.
Police are searching for clues and interviewing teammates about just what went on last night. An autopsy was performed, among other things, to check for signs of drugs. But a National Institutes of Health specialist in sudden death, Dr. Barry Marin, says young athletes can sometimes be stricken even when they appear to be healthy.
It's not common, but there are several cardiovascular diseases which can cause catastrophes like this in young athletes.
Bias's Maryland coach, Lefty Drizel.
I'm going to miss him, and I know everybody else here will too. I really can't say a whole lot more except I love you, Leonard, and I'll miss you. I'll see you in heaven one day.
The understatement of a man too grief-stricken to say more about Leonard Bias, dead at 22. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
On a side note, guys, it does disturb me the older I get how these older white men seem to have a corner market on black male athleticism and ability, meaning it's like they practically own, our strongest, our fastest, our most skilled, our most physically talented, and it's like the only people who can employ, those of us who are physically alpha are these old fart, rich white guys, that own these franchises in professional sports. And even up until recently, when Floyd Mayweather started his own promotion of professional boxing and combat sports, that's really disturbing to me. It breeds of that movie Get Out. But anyway, it seems like professional sports, Negroes in professional sports, are the only places where white people that are racist excuse their racism. I even had a white guy that I knew was racist because he said the N-word to me, and I had to set him straight several moons ago when I worked at a certain place. He talked to me about his admiration of Muhammad Ali. It's like white guys forget Not all white men are racist, but the ones that are, it's like they forget that they're racist when they're either screwing a black woman or they're upholding some black male athlete. Then it's okay for us to be cool with them. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. So yeah, I mean, this happens all too often with young black men dying, not only at these parties, but over petty beefs. And we're not just talking about, your average hood nigga on the street. We're talking about black males who have some type of skill set or some type of ability to, get out of the hood, to develop themselves into something more than what their peers are. And they're moving on with their life, or they should be moving on with their lives, and they wind up getting caught up in and getting entangled in the same web as some of these lower level Pookies and Ray Rays out here on the streets. Of course, the most media covered and a publicized example of this was N.Y.Giants more than 30 years ago. But I made a video, I think that was last year, about a LSU player that was shot and killed in some petty beef outside of a gas station during a fight amongst some Negroes. There was a player that I think he played for the New Orleans Pelicans or something. He was shot and killed while kicking in the door of a man who he thought was his girlfriend's apartment after he caught her cheating in Texas. This just happens too fucking often. This brother said on his Twitter just a few hours after being drafted, quote, "It's all a crazy dream until you do it. I can't even explain the emotions I have right now. So the people that told me to pick a more realistic career, this is as real as it gets. Thank you to the Giants or organization for believing in me. It's only up from there." But see, while this brother is saying this, he nearly lost his life going to one of these ratchet ass parties to celebrate when he should have celebrated at home. Okay? The fact of the matter is, as I said before, I'm going to say it again. No black man who has something going for himself has any business hanging around these street urchins. Okay? If you came from the hood and you still want to support the hood, you can do that shit from a distance. All right? How many times do we have to see these rappers and these athletes get shot or go to prison, just like these Negroes on the street that ain't got nothing going for them because they chose not to leave the game, so to speak, because they had goldfish in a jar mentality? Okay? Now, I'm not saying it's Corey's fault for what happened to him and his teammate, Drew Simmons. But the fact of the matter is, you don't see this happening to no Peyton Manning. You don't see these things happening, to no Brett Favre. You don't see this happening to no Tom Brady or Joe Montana. Okay? Every once in a blue moon, a white dude, he'll fall down the stairs at a frat party and kill himself from being too drunk. But usually, white male athletes and white male musicians and other celebrities, they don't have shit like this happen to them. They just don't. Okay? John Lennon was an exception to the rule. Most of, and that's what's so disturbing, that black men still, we make it out and we still don't make it because we have that goldfish in a jar mentality where we're still fucking with people in environments that we should be nowhere fucking near. Okay? I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Black men divest from Horistan. These females always talking about divest from Blackistan. If anyone needs to be divesting, it's those of us who know better and those of us who have something going for us. Don't let the crabs pull you back down into the barrel. And worst of all, don't be a goldfish in a jar that just jumps into the barrel with the crabs without them having to pull you down. Talk to you later, guys.